everyone was mad, and everyone's expectations were sky high that the Nets were going to fleece the Wizards and get Daniel Gafford and KCP and 2 first-round picks for Spencer Dinwiddie because the Nets, the Wizards needed the Nets to complete this deal. There's nothing that they could do. They needed the Nets. Welcome back to the Glue Guys. This is Mike here. Say hello, Brian.
Hello.
Check us out on Twitter at BKGlueGuys, Netsdaily.com, The Athletic. Get yourself behind that paywall. I think it's 50% off an annual subscription to The Athletic, theathletic.com/glueguys.
Michael. I'm back. We're back. And we're back, too. We're getting back in the full year.
We're going to do 5 shows a week from now until the NBA Finals.
You're back in the haunted Oval Office of the haunted locations.
I was happy to be back. I felt like it was an appropriate place to be after all the wheeling and dealing that just happened with the Brooklyn Nets.
Right. Signing deals, making deals. Well, let's get right into it, Mike. Let's not stall with any more BS, okay? Let's just dive right in. There's breaking news, Mike. Hit the drop. What's the breaking news? Nice.
Breaking news.
Wow.
Shams Charania of The Athletic and Stadium is reporting that Andre Iguodala is deciding between 3 teams of which to join: the Brooklyn Nets, Warriors, and Lakers. Now I ask you, Brian, do you want Andre Iguodala?
That's I hadn't even thought of that. That's how greedy and graspy I am. I just think. Well, it's breaking news, Mike. I hadn't had time to digest it. Not with my. Anyways, let me think about this. Actually, I don't know that I need Andre Iguodala on this team. Is that? Am I looking a gift horse in the mouth here by saying that, Mike?
So here's my. I think there's value in it. So, like, the one thing, and we're going to talk about every single free agent that was signed.
There's
and
so
maybe
much.
Like some that weren't signed, right? But I think the one hole on this team that is left, honestly, besides, like, a big, ugly center, which is something I'm always looking to fill, to have a big, ugly center, is like wing defender, bro, more than a James Johnson. Like, James Johnson, I guess, is that. But I think they could use another defense first wing. Now, like, who is Andre Iguodala now? He played 20 points a game for the Heat last season in 63 games.
20 minutes a game, sir.
20 minutes a game. Yeah. Excuse me. What did I say?
Yeah, he said 20 points a game. I was like,
he averaged 20 points a game.
In his dreams.
50% from 3. No. 33% from 3 on 3 attempts. So actually, like, that's a decent volume on 21 minutes. His 2-point percentage, which is always something that I look at. He only had 1 2-point attempt a game. So he's basically, like, he's not shooting inside the arc. He's just not doing it much at all. But he shot 53% inside the field.
The surest sign of an out to pasture wing player is when they just start shooting those threes. Yeah.
And so he's veteran savvy. He's 37 years old. He's, his credentials are amazing. And I think if he was on this team, I think there would be value in it. I think, like, the value, as like lame as this is to say, is like just personality. It's just like having another like solid heady person in the locker room to talk motivationally to Kyrie Irving a little bit and James Harden. And
what was his relationship with KD in those years? Was it part of? I know that everyone was. Well, it was
the way it read
a Jerry
to me,
Springer episode on a day-by-day basis over there.
Yeah. The way it read to me was that this is like complete, like, just, hey, I didn't do any analysis, just me watching TV. It seemed like KD and Draymond were like the closest, but also like brothers, where they fought all the time.
Yeah.
Steph and KD, there was a respect, but if you believe some reporting that KD refutes profusely, he was jealous of the attention that Curry got, which I don't think is like fully true. I think it's maybe like partly true.
There's a couple of, the one video, you know how I I lazily read into body language and GIFs and memes and things like that. But the one that really gave it all away is the one where Steph Curry has, he's always doing like trick shots, it was one of the more ill-conceived trick shots of his where he like puts the ball on the ground and like pretends to do a golf swing into a 360 is what he does, and then picks the ball up and shoots like a corner like three off after all of that pageantry. And KD's just watching the whole thing and sort of just like blank-faced, just stone-faced, and you can tell kind of dying inside a little bit about the whole thing. That's when I knew. That's when I knew the relationship.
This is a slight diversion. I swear we're going to talk free agency.
This is what you're here for. This is what they come for.
But I do love like Twitter Spaces, like the live Twitter audio stream, their service that KD is like a big supporter of. And there was some Warriors fans talking crap about KD. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and he hopped into their Twitter Spaces conversation, and I listened in, and Durant was furious that they believed some reporting that he was jealous of Curry when he was in Golden State. Furious. And he like couldn't understand it. And the fans, like to their credit, like I don't know if they were podcasters or what they were, but they were like, so Kevin, you tell us, what was it like? Like, why did you leave Golden State? Like, what was it like with you and Curry? And Durant was basically like, I don't have to tell you that stuff. And then they were like, well, that's why we believe that's why we latch onto the reporting maybe, because you won't, sort of open up in that way. He's like, but I don't have to do that, but don't believe that reporting, essentially. Whatever.
You're taking their side, Mike. That's what you're doing right now. I see.
Yeah. But back to Andre Iguodala. So I think if he was on the team, I don't want to say he's like a Jared Dudley type. He's more than Jared Dudley. I mean, again, he's getting 20 minutes a game for, a playoff team with Miami. But I think his value is like, it's a nice club to have in your bag. If Andre Iguodala, a famous NBA golfer, he's a hybrid. He's a hybrid club that you don't bust out all the time. You're not really off the tee with him.
Yeah.
And maybe not in the fairway, but if it's a par 5 and it's your second shot and you're looking at 270 still to go, maybe bust that out.
It's an important.
I don't know golf. Everyone who does probably just.
I stop. Yeah. It's a good archetype to bring up the Jared Dudley. I put Jared Dudley and Brian Scalabrine in similar company of, that part
Most
of.
People do.
of it's funny, and again, we're going off topic, but in the Duncan Robinson podcast, shout out to that new thing. They had Brian Scalabrine on, and this is just a brief insight. It's Nets related. He was Veal was around. He was a Nets guy. After he retired, he said that he, like, just for his own peace of mind, went around to a bunch of gyms and, like, playgrounds to just play high-level pickup guys and, like, wreck those dudes just so that he knew, just because those are the type of people that probably talk the most amount of about his game. And so he was like, I did, like, a full 2 years of just, like, traveling around the world and playing high-level pickup just to prove things to myself. It's like, damn, they were in your head, Brian. They got me. They got in your head bad, dog. Anyways.
Andre Iguodala. So are you a yes or you a no? If it happened, like, so here's what you have to do. In the exercise, you have to imagine you get the news that he, in fact, signed with the Nets. Also, kind of what it means is that, like, they're cutting Reggie Perry or they're cutting one of these 5 draft picks that we all now love.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the financials, and this will segue neatly into the Spencer Dinwiddie situation, Mike. That you can put some meat on those bones as well, because we do have a $11 million trade exception in the wake of all that. So, talk to me a little bit about explain to me, like I'm a 6-year-old, what our financial situation is, Mike.
Well, okay, so everyone, and I always have to, like, caution myself. I know everyone who listens to us aren't an active participant on Nets Twitter, and so I appreciate all of you that maybe aren't.
I don't know that that's true. I think pretty much to a man.
Yeah, we're pretty much in that nexus. That's pretty much all we got at this point. But everyone was mad, and everyone's expectations were sky high that the Nets were going to fleece the Wizards and get Daniel Gafford and KCP and 2 first-round picks for Spencer Dinwiddie, because the Nets, the Wizards needed the Nets to complete this deal. There's nothing that they could do. They needed the Nets, and people were getting stressed.
That first reporting about, like, us turning down the Montrezl Harrell, like, Kuzma combo platter or whatever, like, I don't know where that came from or who was responsible for it. it could have been you, Mike. It could have been you pulling strings from your Wizards connection. I'm not sure. But that's where the insanity started, because some people really like bought that hook, line, and sinker. I think it was like, that's where Spencer's value is right now. We're gonna say no to a Kuzma Montrezl Harrell combo deal. It was all over the place.
Well, and if people and our listeners are so informed and they know where to get their information,
it's a big brain crew out there, Mike. We got engineers out here.
In the earliest days, way back, many months ago, when we were talking about Spencer Dinwiddie's free agency, and we had come to the pretty stark realization that Dinwiddie was not going to be a Net come the start of this upcoming season. Like, it was clear that he was going to move on, that the team was not going to pay him the amount of money that he himself felt like he should get, and he ended up getting. I mean, he didn't get the 5 for $125, but he got $20 million a year at a very nice deal. Sure. I had long said signing trades didn't make any sense for the Nets unless if all they got back was draft compensation and trade exceptions, because the reason why they're not signing Spencer Dinwiddie isn't because they love him. They love Spencer Dinwiddie. They would love to have Spencer Dinwiddie on their team. He's too expensive. Bobby Marks, who's kind of become a little bit of a divisive figure on Twitter just because he's like a little too present, a little too active with the numbers. Little Darren
with his numbers, everyone hates those numbers.
Yeah. He had laid out. I mean, this is easy math. This isn't like you don't need to be a former assistant general manager of the Nets to figure this out.
Try me.
Because where the Nets are in the luxury tax, Spencer Dinwiddie, $20 million a year, would cost the Nets $80 million.
It's a 4Xer.
With the luxury tax and just salary. That's a lot of money. I don't know if people know.
That's 80 on top of the 20.
That's combined.
Okay, that's combined.
That's combined.
It's a 4Xer.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Now, it's funny that I just like kind of dissed Bobby Marks, but now I'm like, I don't really know.
Can we get Bobby on the phone, actually?
But it would cost
clear
the
that
Nets. Up. I think it's the value is just times 4 because it's salary plus times 3 of that salary. So it's whatever it is. So whatever the number is, the team would get cost. So if you added a guy for $10 million, overall it would be $30 million in luxury tax plus $10 million in salary. So it's times 4, but it's not really. It's at whatever. Anyways.
Okay.
Dinwiddie was never going to be a Net, and I almost felt like there was no way the Nets would bring back another decent sized contract within a sign and trade unless it was like someone who was the absolute perfect fit on this team, whose contract was such an amazing value. And if that was the case, I think then the Nets would have had to make a corresponding move to get rid of salary. As much as I do not desire to defend multi-billionaires, global multi-billionaires. That's not like something like I walk around doing. I will defend Joe Tsai in this case. It kind of would have been insanity to pay $80 million for Spencer Dinwiddie or any player who really would just be how many minutes would Spencer have gotten this year on the team? 25 minutes a game, 30 minutes. I mean, 30 minutes is a good amount. He's not that he's not worth the $20 million. He's definitely worth $20 million. He's not worth $80 million. Most people.
I just can't believe you're coming out of the bootlicker closet right now, Mike, live on the show, because it's not your, like they always say, it's not your payroll. It's not your name's not on that check, Mike. No, I'm just kidding. If I was a billionaire.
When he's not a Net, are you surprised that the Nets didn't try to get, because what they got was second round picks and a trade exception. Does that infuriate you like everyone else?
I still am interested by how everyone reacted to that. They were like really down about it, and I just don't understand what the reaction there is. Because I operated from the same place we were 8 months ago when he got hurt or whatever. That all set everything into motion pretty quickly. I mean, it was probably in motion even before that. So yeah, I had come to terms. We talked about this on the show quite a bit. So hats off to both of us. Pats on the backs all around. But yeah, it did not come as any surprise. So I had emotionally prepared. I had time to prepare for that. And I'm perfectly happy with getting a fairly robust trade exception here out of the whole thing, which we can play around with.
You know what's well, then the trade exception is going to be an interesting development for the Nets because, I mean, again, we talk about luxury tax. You have that there's $11 million that they could get in a deal. They could trade. There's a whole list of players that they could trade for essentially who make less than $11 million that would fit perfectly within that.
Oh yeah.
But that would, again, you times it by 4. That would cost you $44 million if you maximize that $11 million. Like if you got an $11 million player.
Right.
So what's good about a trade exception versus getting the Kuzma is if you get Kuzma, then you know Josiah and the Nets know that they're paying 13 times 4. They're paying $52 million for Kyle Kuzma. Where with the $11 million, if they get to the trade deadline, they're like, shit, we really need whatever, Larry Nance Jr. We need Larry Nance Jr.
You were really speaking this into existence because I started to see his name floating around on the Discord. Shout out to the Discord. Invite in the Twitter bio, guys.
Good people.
Guys, and keep it lively in there. But yeah, Larry Nance Jr.'s name started popping up all over the place. No coincidence, I'm sure. But yeah, that's a name that you're going to speak that into existence, I feel like, Mike.
And like you can make that decision. You can say, oh, like, God forbid someone really good gets hurt. God forbid Harden gets hurt. Kyrie gets hurt. KD gets hurt. Whoever it is. Then you can figure out, okay, who do we need to grab who is an approximate of those players or whoever it is. Joe Harris, you know, it's a nice asset. It could be something, but I wouldn't really hold on to it.
Speaking of an approximate of a player, a proxy, if you will, how about that Patty Mills? How about that Patty Mills coming in, shoring up the bench? You know, we talked a little bit on the pre-production meeting 3 days ago, I believe. We began a series of pre-production meetings. there was.
I would like to I should have said at the beginning, I apologize to everyone how long this has taken. This doesn't endear me to anyone. I've been like packing up from where I was at vacation, and I was also then driving.
Mike's been on a Chevy Chase style family vacation. And he's reached the boiling point. You could tell. Yeah.
So I send Brian the Zoom link. So I'm waiting for him, but like I'm doing things. And I don't know when you signed on, but I know my
early
time was
I
like,
was there for a while, and I knew right away what I was signing up for. Patty Mills is we were talking about this in the pre-production meeting. It's like, you know, there's a couple of different ways to build your bench in my mind, and one of the compelling ways to do it is to pick sort of similar players to your starters, adjacent players with somewhat skill sets, if you can find them, if it's possible. I'm not saying Patty Mills is that way for Kyrie Irving. I will say that our new rookie Cam, oh God, I forgot his last name already. Thomas. I was going to go Johnson, and I felt, you know, anyways. Cam Thomas, I'm going to have to lock that in right now. I'm locking it in. Cam Thomas is sort of a very, 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 you know, dialed back version of that in terms of efficiency and general explosiveness. But like, I like the idea that we are filling that spot up with comparatively good scorers. I mean, Patty Mills is, for me, once that name started floating around in the Twitter sphere, the rumors started percolating, and he was between them and the Lakers, I got very excited. I have been a Patty Mills stand, low-key, I don't know, I've never probably said this, and so it'll seem suspicious, but I've been a very big admirer of both him and Fred VanVleet. I think of them sort of similarly, although I know Fred VanVleet is kind of like, you know, excelled beyond where he was a couple years ago when they were much more similar, statistically speaking. But they are the kind of ballsy guards who like close out games under control. You never want to see them have an open three in crunch time. Just steady, stabilizing, smart players. Really, truly the like best part of this offseason. And I think like if I really think in a vacuum, who do I want like leading an offense in a world in which we're relying on a second string point guard? Is it Spencer Dinwiddie or Patty Mills? Like that's not as easy a conversation.
Wow, you're going there right now.
You know,
jeez, Brian.
What? We were just talking about Spencer Dinwiddie.
The dead one.
You know how fast I move on quick. Jeff Green was already like, no, you're out. No, of course. Hefe Converde was always going to be. I'm going to get a Hefe Converde tattoo. Did I tell you about that? It'll be a.
You got a Hefe Converde?
No, I'm not going to. Well, I could. We'll think about it. We'll get some designs going. Tweet at us with some salsa designs. But yeah, so anyways, it's a conversation worth having. I don't know if it sounds like people aren't ready to have it. I mean, first of all, do you want to do like a shout out to Spencer Dinwiddie because he's been a friend of the show? I feel like we put each other on.
Yeah.
Okay, because here's what the thing: Spencer Dinwiddie would respect the fact that we're just going immediately into ruthless comparisons, player comparisons. I think that's the Spencer Dinwiddie way of life.
So the question before us right now is, in fact, not only is Patty Mills a replacement of Spencer Dinwiddie, he is in fact a better fit for what this team needs. That is what you're arguing.
Yes. Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah. Do you disagree? Is that a disagreement? Do you want to have a disagreement about things?
That is a HIPAA violation, my friend.
You're violating my HIPAA. You're violating That's my HIPAA.
So I do. I mean, so here's what Patty Mills is, and as you described, he is a big time shot maker. He is like what Derek Fisher was for the Lakers for so many years, but he's a better player, frankly, than Derek Fisher was. He's an elite shooter. I think the number is like he shoots 46% from three if he is an open shot. Mm-hmm. If he's an open catch and shooter, he typically is a pull up shot maker from three. And that's why his percentage doesn't look as good as like how actually good of a shooter he is. He's not big, but he's definitely crafty. He's shown his wares continually in international basketball. He's an NBA champion. He is like, I never dreamed. I'm serious. I never dreamed that the Nets could get someone as good as Patty Mills with the taxpayer mid-level exception.
Yeah.
Like, when Otto Porter signed with the Warriors, I was like, damn. I thought so I love Otto Porter, and I think Otto Porter would have ended up starting for the Nets at some point down the road if he was on this team. Or there's a version of Otto Porter where that was possible. And he could have helped. But Patty Mills is like, oh my God. If he's out there on the floor at the end of the game, I don't want to do this because now they're on the same team, and I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to bring negativity into this.
Oh my
but
gosh.
If Patty Mills was taking the Joe Harris shots, the Nets would have won the NBA championship.
You're going toxic. You've gone full toxic now.
Because the Nets would have beaten the Bucks in round 2. They would have beaten the Hawks in round 3. Obviously, hopefully Harden would have continued to got healthier. And then if you have a healthy Harden and KD with Patty Mills, against the Suns, the Nets are NBA champion. I know, but that's an alternate. That's a variant reality, a different reality than we can even describe right now.
Sure.
But I'm so confident in Patty Mills as a big game shooter and fitting in on this team. It's like I can't even believe.
So why are you burying me? Why are you trying to dunk on me with my Spencer Dinwiddie comparison?
Spencer Dinwiddie's a better player though. I would say unequivocally. I think if you were doing a 2K draft of all the league, the whole league, you wiped every roster, I would say Spencer Dinwiddie would go 7 rounds before Patty Mills. You
know how I feel about Spencer Dinwiddie. You know how he is
biggest fan.
He's a high volume, low efficiency scorer, very dynamic.
Jesus, man. What? You move on from a breakup. You are cold.
I'm a complete psycho. I'm saying, I think if you're from that position, a microwave scorer is one thing. But like you were saying, if you're drawing comparisons between it's actually 2 separate positions, and it's hard to. We shouldn't be comparing.
That's true.
We're being
lazy.
They're
both technically ball handlers.
It's really Mike James v. Patty Mills is who we should really be stirring this controversy up with. And I know you're going to go to bat for Mike James, so I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that to you, to me, to this show. He'll be around. Yeah. God.
Please don't bring him up. Please.
Okay. Jesus.
No, this is an exceptional win. And we've had some people tweeted at us, basically saying why have the Nets gotten more credit for the Patty Mills side? I will say I think Bill Simmons immediately said his favorite move that he saw was Patty Mills coming to the Nets. Just the quality that Patty Mills brings. Again, he can handle the ball. He's the type of guy who could not take a shot for 3 quarters and then in the fourth quarter hit 3 threes in a row,
right,
and shift the balance of a game. He's been in there in big moments. He's not that old. He's only 32 years old.
32. Sprightly. A baby.
I think it's his birthday coming up in a few days. If Basketball Reference, August 11th. So almost happy birthday.
What's his sign?
Patty Mills.
Is that what is that? A Sag?
God, I couldn't even begin to tell you.
All I know about Sagittarius is that they're addicted to exercise. That's one thing I know. I know that about them. Who's next? Where do we go after this?
Well, one quick thing about Patty Mills. So you bring up Spencer Dinwiddie. So you in your mind think he's, because I almost don't even consider Spencer Dinwiddie a part of the, he hasn't been a part of the Nets.
And I'm the one that moved on. You're always projecting.
Because he tore his ACL. And then wasn't going to come back.
Yeah, and then he couldn't do anything for you, Mike, and you forgot his name. I get it.
It's such a like I could see lineup constructions. So one, he's an amazing guard next to Harden in the bench units. Like I'm obsessed with the fact that the Nets can.
You're talking about Patty right now, right?
Patty Mills as the second guard in the bench units because like the Nets what Steve Nash was kind of doing was he would hand over the reins to James Harden in end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter when the bench units would come in and basically have him run a Rockets light offense where it was ISO Harden with shooters all around him. So what the Nets are going to be able to put out on the floor is James Harden and Patty Mills in your backcourt. I think Joe Harris is going to play more with the twos, a little bit more with the twos than the ones. I think they're going to have a little more position flexibility there. Nick Claxton as the pick and roll big man, and then name James Johnson or name anyone else that's going to be out there on the floor. Maybe Cam Thomas. I don't know. But I think it's going to be, people are going to be upset when they see it. I think people haven't really thought about Patty Mills in a number of years, but because San Antonio has not been interesting for a while. I think once he's on the floor shooting wide open threes and burying them, people are going to be very upset that Patty Mills is a Brooklyn Net, and I'm going to feel great about it.
I just got an idea. There's, how we have a smart audience. This is the big
smart
we have the smart audience. Somebody out there who knows their way around a computer. I'll task you with this. I want to make an NLP app for aggregating language from Twitter that can quantify butthurt from other fan bases when somebody is traded or not traded, because when Patty Mills left, that there was the tweet threads of that were so, it's an important metric for me as a viewer of basketball to go see how upset the other fan base is that their favorite player got traded. Jeff Green, I'm sure there is a significant amount of butthurt in that Woj thread. The Patty Mills thread was overwhelmingly butthurt. They were Patty for Prez. They're that guy's going to be a politician someday. He's going to be a leader of men. That's the feeling. So I'm tasking Glue Nation. Somebody think about how to make a NLP app for aggregating Twitter threads. And I want to quantify this. I want to begin to quantify this and have it be a stat. Put it on Basketball Reference. How butthurt are you when you get traded?
Coming back, we're going to talk. We have to take a quick commercial break, and then coming back, we're going to talk so much more. We have James Johnson thoughts to dive into, draft thoughts, no JJ Redick. I think we need to have a no JJ Redick discussion because I don't think our boy.
If you say his name 3 times, he'll be on the team. That's what that's the rule.
We have so much more to talk about coming back. All right, we're back. Okay. Before we get to James Johnson, there were 2 Nets that were on the team last year that returned and one that didn't. Blake Griffin's back on the minimum. Bruce Brown is back on the $4.7 million qualifying offer, and Jeff Green's in Denver.
Do you know that
out for Hefe Verde?
Do you know that we predicted that, Mike? We did that on this show.
Yeah, of course. That's just what we do.
We're batting 1,000. I got to tell you, this was the tea leaves weren't hard to read this year, but
I thought that Bruce Brown would get double that. I thought he would get the.
You did. You had. I think 9 was your number. If I didn't watch it back, and I was like, that's that's.
Well, yeah. I was feeling better and better as free agency was going, and there was no Bruce Brown offer sheet, and the Nets would have to figure it out. Even though if that happened, there would be another sign and trade scenario, which could have been another good chance for the Nets to get something. But I love, to me, it's kind of ridiculous that So like I thought when they traded for Javon Carter in the first round pick, that like Carter was Bruce Brown insurance. I think, but though there seemed to be no buzz for Bruce Brown anywhere except for Brooklyn.
Yeah,
and obviously he's going to be back with the team. But here's the guard rotation, which is kind of ridiculous. If we're considering Bruce Brown a guard, Kyrie and Harden, Patty Mills and Bruce Brown, Cam Thomas, which should be included because he already has been described as the steal of the draft, and Javon Carter, who's a perfectly fine NBA player. That is better than Mike James.
All of that combined is better than Mike James. Is that what you're saying?
All of that
that equals one Mike James.
All of that is like a half of a James, a half of a Mike. James.
We're coming down hard on Mike James. He really he gave us some minutes, Mike, in a pinch.
Don't like the way he plays basketball.
There it is.
That's the way I would feel. So Bruce Brown coming back at $4.7 million. Obviously, everyone's happy about that. I will kind of say, like, that's not an insignificant amount of money. It's like a nice little commitment, and it's nice that the Nets can do that. They also have, like, I think they have early bird rights next year, which maybe they're going to sign him, or they probably won't, knowing how the Nets are operating. Blake Griffin back in the minimum, fantastic. What feelings do you have? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I will say, like, we're not in a position to offer this really, but like, the 1 year $4.7 million Bruce Brown thing is also going under the radar a little bit for just how good that, because like, I don't want to draw too many comparisons, but there was a lot of other contracts floating around of like and Bruce Brown doesn't have a bunch of like obvious comparisons, so it's hard to kind of like do this with them. But like you were saying, like if he got like 3 years at $9 million apiece, that's like crazy and not
the comp kind of, and I do think this guy is better than Bruce Brown and fits on more teams. But Alex Caruso did get the 3 years.
Exactly. So that was the one that I had in my head too. As some, and like that's
Caruso's a better shooter and like a more like he could play point guard for time at where Bruce Brown can't. But Bruce Brown I think is a better, like, sort of more versatile player.
I mean, Bruce Brown is maybe the most unique player in basketball right now. It's like a guy that plays that big at that size. I mean, whatever, we've already done this shtick, but
again, him and Harden were the best pick and roll duo in the NBA.
So strange. It's so strange. So it's you can't really have a good comp for him. But I'm glad that we have. I want Bruce Brown here long term. I like giving him 1 year deals at the same time. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's how I sort of feel. I don't want to get roped into like a Nerlens Noel situation with that, which I know that that's not a comp, but like that's the contract that I would say is like you might not age as well as you'd like.
Yeah, so I think it's fantastic that Bruce Brown's back. I'm interested to see like he does have a potential for not obviously being as good as he was last year. Not that it was gimmicky, but it was like such a unique way to play a guard.
Yeah,
and it doesn't seem like it should be that hard to play defense against that fact. Besides just like don't let him shoot floaters, right? Like that's the attack on offense. But him fitting more into like. They had to rely on Bruce Brown so much at times.
Totally.
During when the guys
he would have big games. A guy like that would have big games just off of back screens, like just cuts, just stupid trollish cuts, night in night out.
And now it's going to be like, hey, Bruce, like you don't have to kill yourself every game. Like there could be games when he doesn't score at all and just plays defense, and like the other guys on the team are going to obviously carry the load enough. And this team has such position flexibility with whatever they want to do. The only thing, again, that they don't really have, unless if we consider Deandre Jordan this, and we should talk about this, is they don't have the traditional 7-foot center that's a vet that they could, like the Zaza Pachulia. They don't have a Zaza.
They don't.
And are you worried? Are you concerned? Because like the one of the Zellers, which one? Tyler Zeller?
Cody, I believe, was the one that was talking.
Cody. People were hoping it was Cody Zeller was going to come to Brooklyn.
Who's hoping? Who's hoping?
There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of people are big fans of big balding white men. You know,
sure,
big fans.
A lot of fans.
The Bezos is out there, except Bezos is kind of short.
He is strong though. Works out.
I mean it is incredible. You can be that rich, and he hasn't like. Don't hair plugs work?
No, that's the thing. They don't. They don't work.
Okay.
That's what you learn. Actually, it's funny you say this. I went down the weirdest. Here's how I went. It went from like Dr. Pimple Popper to like plaque removal to now I'm in the like hair surgeon talking to me about like Joe Rogan's like botched hair surgery thing. And so now I know a lot about that surgery, and apparently it's not super effective. A lot of versions of it not super effective. So
that's why Jeff Bezos is bald.
Yeah, there you go.
There's no other reason. If you were that rich, you would have hair if you could. Yeah. Right.
Even the hair surgeons are coming out and being like, it's like 15% effective. Yeah.
I love that they gave LeBron my only takeaway of Space Jam, which I haven't seen. I just saw the trailer again. Is just that they gave him more hair. They haired him up. Hollywood.
Do I have to watch this? Am I actually gonna have to watch this stupid Space Jam too?
No, because the Suicide Squad's coming out tomorrow on HBO Max.
Okay, that'll take my reps. Yeah,
you can watch that instead.
Good.
And sorry. What were we talking about? What was the discussion?
Well, we were talking about centers. So Cody Zeller was a big bald white man. We were looking for you wanted to lead into a conversation about Daron Sharp, I believe, and whether he's going to get minutes.
No, he's not. Well, he's not going to be it. So here's my conversation. It's actually about Deandre Jordan. So we kept hearing all of the draft and free agency. Maybe the Nets are going to dump DeAndre Jordan. Maybe they're going to use that because at the time before they drafted Cam Thomas and Daron Sharp, maybe they're going to use one of their first round picks to dump DeAndre Jordan to like the Oklahoma City Thunder, or they're going to figure out a way use 2 second-round picks to dump DeAndre Jordan. Whatever the combination of trades were, the draft happened. That DeAndre Jordan dump didn't happen. Free agency begins. Spencer Dinwiddie signing trade. Why is it taking so long? Well, maybe the Nets are trying to figure out how can they put DeAndre Jordan into this mix so that he's not on the team. Then Christian Winfield from the Daily News, I believe he tweeted this, reported that the connection of DeAndre to the big three is so strong that they don't want to see him leave. They don't want to see DeAndre go. Now, you and I had in our pre-show meeting a conversation about DeAndre Jordan. Should we anticipate he is going to play basketball consistently for the Nets this year? Like, I think in everyone's mind, they've written him off completely. Should we anticipate that DeAndre Jordan is going to be a contributor to this team, at least in the regular season? Not even broaching. I'm not going to broach the postseason.
You've been hanging out in Philly. I could tell.
Postseason.
You stop off at Wawa? What happened? What happened to you?
What do you think, Brian? Should prepare people?
Yeah.
Is DeAndre Jordan going to play basketball?
I would actually. So, looking back on this season, I'm wondering if they're not actually doing this exactly the right way to a certain extent, which is like, get your reps in with DeAndre Jordan for the first half of the regular season, and then when you need to ramp up, whomever is going to be taking up those minutes, if it's Nick Claxton, I suppose, or anybody else, then the second half of the regular season is where you begin to get their reps up, and that if we see the exact same thing next season, then we'll know what the plan is. We'll know that this whole thing has been put into motion years ago. The prophecy was put into motion. Otherwise, then it's just a big grab bag of like, I don't know what to expect of if he comes out stacking up DNPs for the first 2 months of the season. I will not know what to think of this situation at all.
It would be in fact, I think so. My wife, Samantha, is becoming a life coach in a way. So
what?
She's not someone that's going to be giving you advice.
Can she be mine?
It's more of dealing with anxiety and parenting and helping with that. But they're
a career change, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, that's her career change.
Oh, sick.
And she's doing a program called IPEC. And they do these virtual classes, and they teach you all these techniques and this stuff. And there's a description of different people that there's 1 through 7 levels you could be. A person can be at level 1, and they're just really concerned about themselves, but they're weak-minded and all this stuff.
Oh wow!
But a level 7 is someone who is they describe it as world leaders, but I think most world leaders are psychotics, They're described as like they think everything is good and that they can affect change in a really positive way. And if I do something good for you, it's good for me, like uplifting everyone, blah, blah, blah. DeAndre Jordan may just be a completely enlightened human being. If he can be on this team.
You think he's a 7.
Be getting paid $10 million a year. I don't know if he cares about his salary. And not play basketball.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, it would, I'm not that competitive.
He's a full-blown 7, you're saying. That's incredible.
But I think it would have to be tough for a professional basketball player, an average professional basketball player, to be on a team of this magnitude, to have the resume that DeAndre Jordan had, and then not play, right? Like, I think that would bug me, that would be happening. That I used to be good, and I'm on this team that could use someone who I used to be, but I can't be that guy anymore. They don't even want me. Now, getting back to
that's where you go with it. They don't even want me. That's the one in you talking, Mike.
Yeah.
That's your inner one.
So I never asked Sam what I am. I'm afraid. And I think I'm
at least a 2.5. At least
in the relationship, like in her mind, she's like, well, to other people you're a 5 maybe, but to me you're a 2. And I'm like,
classic.
That's probably fair. Yeah. But I mean, okay. So getting back to DeAndre Jordan as a contributing basketball player for this team. Okay, the reporting is varied. It would make sense the Nets would want to get rid of him. He's getting paid $10 million a year. With the luxury tax, that's $40 million a year. He is not contributing to that level. You could get a guy, a minimum level player who would actually probably be better. I mean, Cody Zeller, I actually think, is better than DeAndre Jordan. But I don't see necessarily for the regular season anything wrong with DeAndre Jordan playing on the court. Like, he was good enough last year. Like, there was moments early on that it was like him or Jared Allen. I don't know who was better. Remember? Like, and that got shifted more and more. Jared Allen pretty quickly, like, showed to Kevin Durant and the rest of the world, like, hey, I'm
took a couple of weeks, but it was it.
Yeah. And obviously now Jared Allen is sitting there with a 5-year, $100 million contract. Mazel tov to him, which Brian actually does not like. Brian thinks that's a horrible contract.
I love Jared Allen, and I want him to get paid.
It never sounds that way.
If I was the Nets in that situation, I'm not sure how I'd feel about it, but it's a lot of
the Nets didn't do it.
The Nets didn't do it, and that's why I enjoy it so much for him. Think about how much Overwatch you can play now. How many graphic cards you can buy with that money?
So you're okay. Like, do you think he has value, DeAndre Jordan on this team regular season? Because I don't think that's the sad thing. It's like, I don't see any version, unless if DeAndre Jordan is like rejuvenated in some way. I don't see how he plays for this team in the playoffs.
It's really hard to figure out what exactly the situation is there. Like, clearly next in line is Nick Claxton, who's like, if we are going to be constructing a team around a like obvious center, and Nick Claxton I guess that, then that's where you go. But like, it doesn't seem like we're doing that. Like, even though like Sean Marks went out and was like, yeah, we need to get big and go for rebounding and stuff. Like, Blake Griffin was that signing for us for that, which at this phase of his career is not a super duper big manny rebounder kind of bro. So maybe we're zagging full blown into the territory where, Mike, you've often talked about of playing KD at the 5, which we never saw. That never happened.
It really didn't.
Yeah, it really never happened. But like, I mean, of the people who could then ostensibly fill up that gap, Day'Ron, Nick Claxton, Alize Johnson, it's like those are some young pups who have not been battle tested too much. Nick Claxton earning his stripes, and clearly could have like the like that next Super Saiyan boosting season this year, but that's not by any means a sure thing, and also that doesn't even like begin to answer the question of why is DeAndre Jordan just like rotting in DNP land. So I don't know, and if I will know exactly what's going to happen if he starts playing starter style minutes or like 20 minutes a game for starter minutes for that position. then I'll be like, okay, he's a regular season, first out of the regular season, center basically, and then we'll phase him out as we see fit. Yeah.
And so that's the thing. Like, I know this is so far away. Projected starting five in my mind, it's obviously the big three. It's still Joe Harris, and I think it's Blake.
Yeah.
Like, I think Blake starts. So if Blake is starting technically at the five, he's playing some minutes nominally at center. That means I would say, but I do want to say this about Nick Claxton. Like, he's only in his third year, right? He played, let me pull up the amount of games he played. He played 15 games his rookie year, and he played 32 games this past season. He averaged 18 minutes a game, 19 minutes a game this past season. Like, he is so talented, and he has the potential to be the most dominating Nets defender on this team. But he needs to be able to play a full season healthy where he's getting a reliable 20 minutes a game, right? Like, because it's kind of a bad bet to bet on him being there for all season and being there in the playoffs. Like,
I think this is that season. I think we've been like,
it has to be this.
It really, like, well, we're trying to think about who fills that space. It's like, I really think if it's not Claxton, there's something amiss in the universe here. Because this has got to be. I mean, the third season is typically quite a big one in terms of your general trajectory as a player. So if he's not getting the reps now, it's just time. It just is the time, Mike. We got to make it happen.
There is one like kind of curveball that could be thrown in the mix. Is that Shams Charania reported that Lamarcus Aldridge is considering making an NBA comeback. That he's been evaluated by medical. Brian's making faces.
It's my
been evaluated by medical professionals, and that he feels comfortable to maybe play basketball again. But obviously, teams would have to decide for themselves. Because at one point, Chris Bosh tried to kind of make a comeback, and the Heat didn't let him. I think from like an insurance point of view, and medically, they were like, we just can't risk you playing. And I obviously two different people, so may not be the same outcome. Let's just say live in a world where Lamarcus Aldridge, it's just like everyone's like, actually, we kind of overreacted and everything looks fine medically, and we feel confident in what we're seeing now. Would you welcome him back in the Nets world, open arms?
We overreacted to your heart condition. Yeah, it's not the kind of thing that like.
You're like, you won't even play the bullshit.
Yeah.
You're like,
no, I don't.
This guy's life.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, even in that alternative universe, I didn't love the Lamarcus Aldridge. I know there's people that are now sort of defenders in hindsight. They're playing the 2020 hindsight game with us, Mike, and being like, that was the difference between us and making the Eastern Conference Finals. And I don't know. I don't play those types of games, but I wasn't super in love with the Lamarcus Aldridge experience up to that point. There were some things that were good. There were some things that weren't, but it was basically like you're playing an entirely different kind of basketball when you're going super half court. He like brought the half court Spursiness to us instead of like doing any kind of anything different than what you would expect, which is fine. I mean, like, he was doing it at a high enough level. Like, it didn't dip off or anything, which is, that's kudos. He's super consistent, and he's been doing that for a long time. But I just didn't ever. It just doesn't. It didn't excite me, and it didn't feel like a long-term solution to what we were going to be wanting to do basketball-wise going forward. So for me, if he wants to come back, Gucci. But I'd prefer if it wasn't on the Nets. I hate to say that.
I kind of would. I'd be into it, even though at the time I wasn't. Just because
for the redemption arc, you want the arc.
No, I do. It's a hole on this team. Like, this team has. But
it's not a hole that he's like particularly good at filling.
Yeah,
he like his body fills it, but like his it's a
his body,
his body,
big dumpy body.
But it's not. It's like it's a Fugazi. You're getting the body. You're getting the body, but you're not getting the action.
Yeah, I agree that he isn't what his body looks like, but I still think there's like utility and value in him in terms of being on the basketball court. He's really smart. He played with Patty Mills for many years, so maybe they have like a fun little side game that they could be playing on the court together.
That makes it even worse. I don't like the I don't want your side game. Get out of here.
No side games. I should say, and everyone, God bless everyone who listens to this show.
Good
because sometimes you don't know. Like I can see the numbers. You know, I can look to see who listens, and I love the numbers, and I love to see as many people that listen. But the fact that you just don't know who's listening. And then something happens, some news breaks, and then people tweet at you, and then you know, okay, yes, people are listening. When Boban re-signed with the Mavericks, many people tweeted at us to say Mike's going to be upset, and I was upset. I've kind of already moved on.
People in the Discord, shout out to the Discord, double shout out, 1 episode, 2 shout outs. Twitter, invite in the Twitter bio. People have been memeing about your love for Boban, and they don't get it. They don't like it. They don't want it on the show anymore.
Do people watch basketball? Come on.
There it is.
He's a dynamic force in the court when he plays 4 minutes a game.
Yeah.
He doesn't play.
I mean, if you're setting that up to Deandre Jordan's DNPs, it's like it's 4 minutes versus, it's sort of a Peter Thiel 0-1 conversation, right? I mean, what are we getting out of DeAndre?
So there's one new net that they signed that we haven't talked about yet, and it's actually someone that you've been talking about. I feel like for a while, James Johnson.
Yeah,
rugged, clawing, fighting James Johnson.
Heavily throat tattooed.
Mm-hmm.
I've enjoyed him. I hope he's not done gas tank wise, because it looked like that was maybe a change of scenery is gonna boost it up. But he's been passed around a little bit in recent years, which you hate to see. But only 34, not in his just in the
look like it.
Just in the beginning of the twilight years. A great nickname, Bloodsport. You know this? You knew this.
Fantastic.
Because of all
I don't know if people actually call him that.
I'm gonna start doing this more. Well, it's because he's got a black belt in karate, Mike. He's got a black belt in karate, like the movie Bloodsport, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. You ever seen that?
No.
You never watched like TNT on a Saturday morning growing up? You never did that? Because it was always on.
Maybe I was watching TBS because usually it was Dawson's Creek on a Saturday morning,
right?
Which is more vibe.
That was more
Bloodsport.
Yeah. So he knows karate, which is.
Well, what do you like about James Johnson besides his nickname and?
So I've enjoyed that we have targeted a utility player that I've long lusted for, of the Wilson Chandler milieu. James Johnson is of that milieu, which is like an above, or sort of like league average to slightly above league average, depending on what year it is, 3-point percentage, and then just generally like a utility defensive guy with like just like an edge, just a nasty edge to him. So like I'm not like expecting the world from James Johnson, other than just being like a sort of plug and play defender / maybe once in a while good game shooter, But that's a bar he can reach at 34. That's where he's at. Yeah.
I don't feel bad necessarily, but like, so people are comparing like, oh, is he going to be the next Jeff Green? He's an entirely different player.
He's not that.
Than Jeff Green.
He is not that. Yeah. He's not explosive. He has some. So I actually watched a little bit of his highlights from this past season, and I will say he still puts the ball on the ground. He wants to be driving. It's not as effective as Jeff Green is like abnormally explosive for his age and size. So it's not that, but it is an attempt at it.
Yeah, it's a different player. I mean, it's a rangy wing. He's actually like a more like, I like Jeff Green's defense, and Green could play the 5, where like people are saying James Johnson could maybe play small ball 5 at times. Jeff Green was a little thicker. James Johnson, though, I give him more of a shot of guarding actual wings than Jeff Green does. Like, I think James Johnson could lock people up. Now, the only thing about him is his shooting is so bad. He shot 30% from 3 last year, and he's like 55% from the free throw line or something, that he really can't ever play on a closing line.
But he's had seasons of 37, 30, like high 37. High 37. Yeah.
And this is a situation where it's like, but over his career, he's been a 30% 3-point shooter with 1.7 I'm looking at 1.7 attempts per a game, which is very low volume.
Oh, you don't have these memorized, Mike? You don't know this all the time?
He's not a good shooter. He's so like he isn't Jeff Green. There should be no expectation because like Jeff Green, he's had up and down 3-point shooting seasons, but like he was shot 43% last year for the Nets. Like he
had an insane year last year. I mean, this is what we talked about in our last podcast. It's like there's just no way he can replicate that amount of success again. And you don't want to have the down year Jeff Green. Like you want to just cherish the Jefe Converde season, and that's what we're gonna do. But I will say, like the big difference, I think, and I don't know if James Johnson will be tasked with this at all, but the playmaking is actually much more in James Johnson's his favor. He's had some seasons of 4-ish assists, playing very few minutes, and a limited role. He's just a good second passer in a system offense, which I think is why a person like Sean Marks would have him on his list. On that special list of his. So there's a lot to like about James Johnson, but you have to go into it knowing that he's just not. Don't expect the Jeff Green experience from James Johnson. It's not that.
Yeah, and like ultimately, how many minutes is he really getting? He's a great guy to have on your bench. Like he really can actually play basketball, and
he's a nasty MFer. Like he is. He really is. He's a nice. We truly were missing. I mean, Jeff Green. I've never met a nicer guy. I've met. Like of all the people of all the friends of the show, he's the friendliest friend of the show. He was a sweet potato. He laughed at our bad jokes. He laughed at our bad jokes, Mike. You've never seen a player do that.
I don't really have bad jokes. I don't know.
That's true. That much is true. That was a bad joke.
That was a bad joke.
If Jeff was here, he would have given you a courtesy chuckle.
Let me just do this. There's a list of the 9. So the Nets technically still could add someone if they wanted to for a minimum deal or whatever. Like Andre Iguodala would be that. Here are the 9 best free agents available. Let me just run down the list for you. Okay. Kawhi Leonard is a free agent, which would be hilarious.
I'd take him. I'd take a flyer.
Yeah. Put him in there. Let him rehab his torn ACL.
Yeah.
Dennis Schroeder, which is real rough that our guy who turned down $80 million.
I know that's going to be a real interesting situation because he's holding out for something that ain't there, Mike. That's not there.
It ain't there. I mean, it's like it's another 1-year deal, prove it, go somewhere type situation. I think for him. Oof. Kelly Oubre.
No, thank you.
I could be in for Kelly Oubre if he was a minimum guy. I think he's still. I still think there's.
I'm over the where is Kelly Oubre's ceiling. I don't want to be part of the where is his ceiling journey that he's on. He's still on that journey. He has to find his ceiling, and it's not. It's a whole lot lower than where he thought it was. That's my experience with the Kelly Oubre thing. Am I wrong? Right? Am I wrong?
No. Yeah. Well, yeah, you are, but that's fine. Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson used to be a feature of this show like 6 years ago. That was like when we were desperate and trying to find any player that maybe had some upside. Reggie Jackson was one guy targeted as like, oh, that's the next James Harden. Because he was a bench guard for the Thunder and he had long arms.
Oh, so I see.
That guy should be James Harden. He was phenomenal in the playoffs. Still unsigned. Kind of crazy. Josh Hart could very much like him.
So can I say that Reggie Jackson finally found his ceiling? He locked in on that this season. That was a guy who's also didn't sort of have a great understanding of his ceiling.
But if I remember correctly, he pissed off all the Thunder teammates when he was younger with the Thunder. And those teammates included Kevin Durant.
It's the one thing you can't do is to come in there and have a misassessment of your ceiling. You got if I come in here thinking I'm what are these? This is an 8-foot ceiling I'm in here, and I think that's a 12-footer. We're gonna have some problems, Mike. I'm in the hobbit hole. Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of rehabbing old relationships, can I make a bold prediction for next offseason?
Sure.
I think Draymond Green is going to be traded to the Nets next offseason. I think there's some good vibes happening.
That is a wild, bold prediction.
He called Kevin Durant the best player on the planet because they're both playing for Team USA right now. And Durant is rip-roaring, the greatest American basketball player in Olympics history over Carmelo Anthony, which is a weird kind of list to be on. But
did you see Ben Simmons is trying to the notification from The Athletic
The jumper?
What was it?
Oh, no,
well, he's trying to force a trade to the Warriors right now. Is apparently what the rumor. That's what the rumor mill is saying.
Let's pick that up. But that would be a horrible. I mean, it would be good in theory if Draymond Green wasn't on the team.
Yeah.
But Draymond's on the basketball court, so you would have two of the non-shooter, like two just complete non-shooters on the court together.
I could see it. I like it.
Okay, good. Thanks. Nice return.
Yeah.
It's a podcast.
It's a real. You won that ping pong match, Mike. I'm going to pick up. I'm under the table looking for the ball.
Okay. Anyways, I don't want to go. The rest of the list is DeMarcus Cousins, which actually probably.
Come on, Mike. What are we talking about?
Paul Millsap.
Wait, hold on. We're just going to blow right past him. That's the guy.
Lauri Markkanen. No, we're not. We can't have. We can't.
No, I know.
Because I think it's been proven that he's done in terms of being valuable. All right. Before we end the show, because this has been a great show, I want to do two things. One, draft your draft thoughts, because we haven't got to them, and there's a lot to talk about there. But before we get there, I want to get to our guy, JJ Redick. So JJ Redick's a phenomenal podcaster and was an NBA player. I declared loudly and multiple times that if he wasn't a Brooklyn Net, it would be the greatest indictment about his basketball skills ever. Because the guy, everyone knows this, his family lives in Brooklyn. They have lived in Dumbo. They live in Brooklyn, even while he played for the Sixers, and even while he played for the Pelicans, and even when he got traded to the Dallas Mavericks. He has declared loudly that he wants to be playing on the East Coast. He said that for many years. He used to drive from Brooklyn to Philly. He would live in Brooklyn even while playing for Philly. And it just felt like he was going to be a Brooklyn Net, that he was going to be a veteran minimum signing. Brian,
Michael.
is JJ Redick going to be a Brooklyn Net?
He's going to, I mean, you said it this is 3 times now, and he will, I mean, he's probably already signing his paperwork. I actually don't think so, Mike. I think that I think the book on JJ Redick might be closing, Mike. This could be the end of the JJ Redick. Is he on a team right now? Does he have a job?
Does not have a job.
How hard do you think he's looking for a job?
Well, I do think like the way he has talked before, like, I don't know if you heard it, like after he got traded to the Mavericks, he had like this whole like confessional episode of his show. I think it was after the Pelican seasons ended officially, or after, I forget when it was. It must have been, I don't know when it was, but he was basically like, the franchise screwed me over. They said I went into the beginning of the year that, you know, I didn't want to be here, but they said they would work out a deal for me and that they would keep me involved, and then they basically didn't. Like he claims that they totally screwed him over. I think from the way I've heard him talk, you know, I've listened to his show, he's probably pretty selective. Like he could go to like probably a number of teams. Let's just like a Minnesota or just whatever. Name any team that's not on the East Coast. And he's like, why would I don't want to do that. You know what? Play one more year for $1 million. It sounds like a lot of money. It is. But also when you've made how much money he's made over his career, it's probably not that significant to him compared to maybe being home with his family. So I think he's selective, meaning the Nets, the Knicks, back to Philly, maybe all the way up to Boston, right? Like the Excella corridor. He needs to be near an Excella.
I'm just looking at this too, like his last year of like actual productive year, like his New Orleans year, when he's 35, just a year younger. It's 15 points per game. Like he's still like his actual, like when he's playing basketball years are still pretty consistently good. Like there was no like precipitous drop off outside of this like, you know, botched trade situation that happened.
Yeah, it was 45% from 3. I mean, that's that year you're talking about, the 15 points per game.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee, I mean, he's been one of the great shooters of his generation the entire time he's been in the NBA. Like if he was on the Nets and was just open 3 guy, he would be hitting 45% from 3, right? Now he wouldn't do anything else for the Nets. Like he's always been kind of like a craftier ball handler than maybe he would get credit for. I mean, at one season he averaged about 4 assists a game, which is pretty nice. Again, it's better than a lot of like pure shooters. Can't play defense, I'm sure, at this point, as old as he is. He seems like a good guy to have in your locker room. But if you look at the Nets roster, you have Patty Mills, a shorter shooter. Javon Carter, 39% from 3, but like, not that you're going to rely on him, but he's there. Joe Harris. And then, again, 3 of the greatest shooters of all time.
Yeah.
And KD, Kyrie, and Harden. You don't really, like...
A one-dimensional skill we don't need is three-point shooting right now.
Right now. It'd be nice, like, because then you could construct, again, talking about bench lineups, you could have a bench lineup with Harden running ISO Harden where it's a pick-and-roll center, and then it's J.J. Redick and Patty Mills and, again, James Johnson just floating around. Like, Bruce Brown floating around. Like, that'd be a pretty small lineup, but, like, that's an amazing shooting lineup that James Harden could be a part of. I'm just, like, surprised. I honestly thought that he was going to be a Net. Maybe he still will be. Maybe it's just, like, already going to happen, and they're just like, why are we let's not sign this contract now. Let's just figure it out later. We'll deal with it then. He probably should sign with the Knicks. The Knicks could actually probably use him. That's who he should sign with. But I'm not here.
You don't want to dump on the Knicks real quick?
No. I actually think the Kemba Walker thing's okay.
It did actually pretty like shore it up. I thought they would have had a pretty disastrous offseason, but for that actually kind of makes it all make a little bit more sense.
Well, let's get to your draft thoughts.
Oh, my draft thoughts. It was actually really a fun thing that I did was just peep into the draft just enough to have just like the one little insight, which is that at 27, basically to a man, let's see, Kessler Edwards was tracked to us, Raekwon Gray, Day'Ron, obviously. Those were 3 guys that were all tracked to our 27th pick by a variety of different sources, and only 0 of them were actually picked at 27. We all picked them up later and for Raekwon quite a bit later. So I don't pretend to know anything about like advanced scouting or whatever. But I do think it's a good sign where guys who were picked deep in the second round had been tracked to your 27th pick, some almost 30 picks in the future. So, I mean, again, I don't have like super hot takes about any of these guys. Excited to see what the Cam Thomas experience is. I read a little bit about his like potential like hyper alpha Chad vibes that's been putting everybody off. But you can't always handle an alpha Chad. But I think it's an interesting sort of project to put on the bench. We haven't had an alpha Chad scorer project on the bench since Marshawn Brooks, and that was the most alpha Chad scorer I've ever seen. But yeah, I'm trying to think of like a real, like just true blue, like we picked up a scorer on the draft. It's been a while since that. So
Marshawn Brooks. I mean, it's Marshawn Brooks.
So a fun pickup.
East Coast Kobe.
yeah. So fun pickup, but like, yeah. And again, like,
I did a pod with Alex Schiffer of The Athletic after the draft. And like, I didn't poo the pick of Cam Thomas. I was like, he's not going to play. But as I kept hearing more and more people talk about him, and they were like, he's kind of the steal of the first round, and like he was a guy who maybe was late lottery, and then he ended up where the Nets ended up, and all this stuff. And there was a key moment in the draft that was on the television broadcast that I didn't bring up at the time, and I don't know if everyone caught it, but so Bobby Marks, the aforementioned Bobby Marks,
friend of the show. Can you throw a friend of the show on there for Bobby?
Friend of the show. Apologies. He has been on the show.
Jesus.
Bobby Marks does this consulting gig for draft prospects where he helps them with interviews that they're going to have with teams. Like he does mock interviews with a lot of guys. I don't know it's for a specific agency, but he does this for a lot of people. I remember last year when there's all the LaMelo Ball controversy where a lot of people were like, that guy's a weirdo and he's strange and all of his teammates in Australia hated him. Bobby Marks would loudly say I've worked with him, I've interviewed with him. He's a great guy. He's just he's kind of quiet. He's not like completely outlandish like you expect like his father, but like people are gonna really like him when they meet him. And I was like, I filed that away, and then he had this season in Charlotte, and LaMelo Ball was awesome. And so during the draft broadcast, after the Nets pick Cam Thomas, Bobby Marks comes on the screen and wearing, his glasses, and he has got his Jeff Bezos bald head.
Jesus.
Sorry. Jeez, that's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Bobby Marks said this is the only guy I saw him do it for the draft, and I didn't watch the entire draft, but I saw it for this moment. He said, teams are saying, there's some rumors that Cam Thomas's personality is maybe people are a little turned off by it. He says, but I interviewed with the guy, and I love him. I love he seems dedicated to the game and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm going to trust Bobby Marks on this because he did the same thing with LaMelo Ball, a controversial prospect, and he's doing it again with Cam Thomas. There's no benefit to him. He talks to I think he talks like 60 prospects a year. There's no benefit to him to single out one, but he chose Cam Thomas to say, hey, this guy has got a fantastic personality. I guess
Bobby Marks with the high EQ. Never guess it.
And I undersold again, rereading it. Like I think Kevin O'Connor had Cam Thomas the number 14 overall prospect. Again, late lottery. Get him at 27. If he's that talented, and again, he was so productive in college. Like I should maybe factor him in being a role on this team right now, even though. Like, do they need a microwave scorer on this team? I mean, kind of, but not really. It's not bad to have a guy like that. So I more and more love that pick. Did you do your homework and watch the Raekwon Gray footage?
I did. I've done some homework. I mean, the Kessler Edwards stuff is some of the more interesting. I went and did the deep dive on Kessler. Who I'll be surprised if these guys crack the rotation, obviously. But the Kessler shooting experience is really an interesting one, because that is as unorthodox a stroke I made the comparison of Reggie Miller last week, like kind of as just like he's a 6'8" gangly dude who's like known for shooting threes in the high 30s and low 40s, a Reggie Miller thing to do. But it's very Reggie Miller in the sense that they also have stupid form, stupid in the bad way. So I'll be interested to see. I'm always very suspicious of guys with bad form, who like really are trying to market themselves as 3-point threats. So I'm dubious. I'm interested in Kessler for that reason. But
insanely productive. I think it was like I had the number last week, and it's probably still here in my notes. 39.5% from on nearly 400 3-point attempts over his career in college, which is a massive amount. Now, here's what Sam Vecini, the NBA draft expert for the Athletic, said negatively about Kessler Edwards, which is he's a pretty poor ball handler, very loose to the ball, not a change of pace or change of direction guy, which is like. He's like a discount Trey Murphy Kispert. Like that's why you get him in the second round.
Yeah.
He's pure shooting. He's got some D to him, got length, but he's just not going to do anything else for you, at least for a while.
Yeah.
Which is fine. If he shot 39% from three for the Nets on 3 attempts a game.
That's not going to happen. We got a real problem if he's taking 3 attempts a game.
If he's starting for this team.
Yeah.
All right, so Kessler, but he's interesting. I think he's just pure shooting and length. That's a prospect.
Well, I'm interested in just like how we got like memes. We got our like Cam Thomas, who's like our Mamba energy bro. Dayron Sharp, who's like thick boy center bro. Raekwon, who's like gonna give Reggie Perry his reps.
Thick boy. Big boy center.
Yeah. We got. I mean, the bang bros of Reggie Perry and Raekwon is a fun thing to think about. Am I missing anyone other than Kessler? Wait, did we have 5 people?
Zagorowski.
Oh, right.
Yes. No one has any point to say, but like if you look at his statistics, pretty solid. I mean, 45% off the catch threes, over 40% from 3 in all 3 of his college seasons. Shooter, like a straight up, like that's I do think Marks targeted roles as opposed to guys he thought maybe had like maybe they weren't good in maybe they're good at like a couple of things. He targeted guys who were like good at one thing.
This is why I love Sean Marks. I think that's really the secret to drafting. At least lock in the one thing. I feel like for years we'd always been trying to get like these broad utility players or whatever. Anyways, I really enjoy the memery of Sean Marks' drafting. Just like guys that have a strong narrative to push in their little draft video, like on draft night. It's an important part.
Well, I'm rooting for Raekwon. I think everyone could tell Raekwon.
Oh, we're like picking guys. You want to pick like we're picking boys. All right.
He's so much fun to watch. Just his size, driving to the hoop. He like attacks the rim, not as a like post player, as a wing. He at 6'8", 270, he drives to the lane like he's just like your average college guard. You know, like trying to get into the bucket, but he's massive.
Did you know that there's a summer league game in 4 days?
Well, haven't there been some summer league games already? Like, I feel like I've seen some statistics.
Really?
From, like,
what's
for
happening?
Some, like,
I thought it started the 8th.
I'm always
in
confused
Vegas
about where it's happening.
Why
but there's like a
they do a very
bad
bad job of informing people about this situation. I'm legitimate. I'll probably be dirty streaming this on Twitch, by the way.
Yeah, no, there've been summer league games already, like some in Utah. Like I guess there's some games happening in Utah.
What?
For who? Yeah, and the Jazz are playing a blue squad and a white squad. Like the Jazz.
It's Jazz v Jazz. That's not
Jazz v Jazz. I'm excited. I mean, I've said this before. I think this is one of the most exciting Nets summer leagues possible because you have 5 draft picks. Brandon Knight, former like a guy we would have obsessed over.
We almost traded Brook Lopez for Brandon Knight. That's where 6 years ago. That's where we were.
Brook Lopez trade jumble, just like any player of that ilk. I think it's. I mean, I know Team USA plays in the gold medal game against who is it? France. Late Friday night, which is going to be a good game. But I'm almost more interested in Nets Summer League. Like, what if Cam Thomas just comes out and just lights it up, and we're like, oh my God,
you already know.
Here he comes.
You already know it's going to happen too.
And then the Nets trade for Damian Lillard using Cam Thomas as the centerpiece.
There it is. A boy can dream, Mike. Right? Yeah, lock it in. Let's put it in the can.
Thank you all for listening. This was a long episode, but we felt like we wanted to give what happened previously its proper due.
Yeah.
So
get it in there.
Thank you all for listening.
At BK glueguys on Twitter. Discord, 3rd shout out in one episode. Invite is in the Twitter bio. Please join us. Mike, The Athletic, Netsdaily. What else? What else we got?
Twitter, you said.
Twitter,
YouTube,
Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos. Amazon is a website where you can buy things. You can buy things on Amazon. And 5 stars, we want them, we need them, we have to have them.
Perfect.
Bye, everybody.